you served your country, whether military or spouse. Now you are stepping into a new and unfamiliar world. We would like to show you everyone's path is different through the stories of others in the military community. Grab your favorite beverage and prepare to listen to our next transition tale. Welcome to another episode of Transition Tales. I'm super excited today. I have my friend AJ Turek on this podcast with me, and I will let her introduce herself. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
AJ Turek. I am currently a civilian firefighter over here on Herbert Field Air Force Base. I did, however, get my start as an active duty firefighter working with the Air Force. I did that for 5 years, got out of the military, did city fire, that was my intention when I joined the Air Force. I literally was too broke to put myself through the fire academy where I was growing up in Missouri. Did my time. I got out and did city firefighting for almost 5 years. Loved it. Not attached to the military whatsoever. And then obviously I did 5 years with that city fire department. And then I got hired back on base and I started with Eglin as an actual GS civilian firefighter. And I've been doing that ever since. And that was 2010. So I've been back on base for about 10 years.
Wow. So what was your transition out of the military like?
Okay, first off, it did not go as planned. And I thought I was a pretty decent planner. You know what I mean? Like, not super detail oriented, but like decent at planning ahead. So it was good. It was actually a good transition, even though, again, it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. I took a full 12 months before I got out, and I was like, I'm going to fly back to where my family lives, the Missouri area, the Chicago area, the burbs. I'm going to talk to fire chiefs. I'm going to drop off my resume. And so for a year straight, I started applying for firefighting positions because, quite frankly, firefighting on the outside is an extremely competitive job. There's not a lack of applicants for firefighting.
It's a cool job.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it really is. I personally still think it's the best job on the planet, but that's just me. I'm biased. So I did all this work and absolutely not one single firefighting job popped up. I got out without a job lined up, which was a little bit scary. However, I had a part-time job going for me already. I was lifeguarding part-time down here on the Gulf of Mexico, if you will, saving lives, kissing sharks. So I knew I had that part-time lifeguarding job to fall back on. And then I also, before I got out, I was like, well, what's something else I could possibly do that would be fun that I would like to get paid for? That's more of a, I don't want to say a normal job, but like an easier job to get into. So I spent the money and I got certified to be a personal trainer. And I'm like, I can work at a gym. I walked into the gym and I told this lady, I was like, I love fitness and I would love to make your gym a better place. I wasn't certified at the time. And I was like, would you hire me even if I'm not certified? And she was like, yes, I need someone to run the front desk. And I was like, great. I'm terrible at counting money and scheduling things. Perfect job for me. I work the front, you know. So I took the job. Wait, let me back up. Before I started working at the gym and fell back on my lifeguarding, if you will, I took a month off and I went and I saw my family because, you know, when you're single and you're active duty, you tend to get the leftovers for leave. I'm sure other people have experienced that. You know, you try to get the married people that have kids and whatnot, make sure they get plenty of leave and they get plenty of leave around the holidays. And you're like, oh, you're single, you can get back to your family whenever it's not as paramount to make sure you have Christmas or Thanksgiving off. And I understood it. However, I didn't get as much leave as I wanted to get. So I didn't get to see my extended family. And it was one of those situations where when I finally had vacation days, I'd go and hang out with my parents. But I hadn't seen my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles. And I come from a very big Italian family on my mother's side and a very big Bohemian family on my father's side. So our extended family is very important. I know not everyone has really, you know, they're super tight with their extended family. So I took a month off and I went back. And all I did, I stayed with my grandma in Chicago. I painted her house. And then I got to see everyone that I hadn't been able to visit because I did 5 years active duty. I signed for 4, extended 1. So I got to see them. I think that was part of my transition being so nice is even though I wasn't working at the time, I didn't have to work immediately. I had saved up money in case I couldn't find a job, which thank God, 'cause Like I said, definitely did not step into a firefighting job right away, as I'm sure a lot of people that transition out of the military um, find, regardless of how well you're planning. But to be able to soak my family up totally made up for, I don't know, there was less stress. You know what I mean? I was surrounded by all the people that I love and I was able to connect with them. And I really think that that helped me more than I realized it did at the time. You know, like looking back, I'm like, wow, that was the best thing I could have done, was taking that whole month and caught up with everyone that I loved that I hadn't seen, you know, or had enough time to catch up with. So that was a big piece of my transition going well, was catching up with family. I encourage my young guys that are getting out. I'm like, go see your family. The people that you didn't get to see, go see them. You know, soak them up.
So when you were active duty, like, did you like bleed blue, or were you just a firefighter wearing a airman uniform?
I bled blue, hook, line, and sinker. I loved it. I loved fire. I joined to be a firefighter. I, I I loved everything. I loved everything that the Air Force was giving me at the time. Right, like, I'm not going to say I was mature enough to completely understand it. I just knew that I was very happy and that I was being set up for the life that I couldn't afford. Like I said, I couldn't afford the fire academy. I had no idea how much I was going to enjoy the military. In fact, to be honest, I hadn't planned on getting out, but I met my now wife, and this was 2003 when I met her, and they didn't lift Don't Ask, Don't Tell until
Right.
2012. Right? 2012?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had planned on staying in. I mean,
It
but
sucks
then I met
having to
her.
choose your personal life over your career, doesn't it?
It did. It did. And I mean, you know, you kind of take a chance on each other because I mean, we had been together 5 years before I got out, and you know, she got out a year before me, but then jumped right into reserve IMA, which was great for her because that helped her transition. By the way, while she was looking for a job, she was still getting a paycheck working for the reserves, like in
Right.
our town. Yeah.
So do you think taking that time off with your family helped you be okay with taking that uniform off and be more civilian?
1,000%. You nailed it. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, absolutely. Because being with my family, wow, yeah, it kind of reintegrated me into civilian life as I did it with my family. Yeah, so it didn't hurt nearly as much to take that uniform off because, quite frankly, I enjoyed wearing it.
I did too. So what do you think was your biggest challenge when you transitioned out?
Not having a firefighting job lined up. Because, like I said, I had joined so that I could be a firefighter for the rest of my life. And I didn't have that job lined up. And quite frankly, that was my passion. Clearly, it's I'm still doing it, you know, to this
Right.
day. That was my biggest challenge. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, that was the most organized I've been in my entire life. You know what I mean?
Why
Trying to
didn't it
set up.
work?
Exactly. Exactly. That was it. That was my biggest challenge.
How did that
But
impact you?
having, not as greatly as I thought it would have. You know, like getting out, it was scary to get out and not have that job. And it was like, it kind of hurt my heart a little bit to not be stepping right into firefighting. But I knew I was going to get a job. You know, I figured if I have to apply, you know, I mean, if they're hiring 7 times, I'll apply 7 times. If I don't get, you know, that job and another job, I mean, like in my mind, I was like, if it's going to take me 60 applications and 3 years to get my firefighting job, I literally don't care. Like, I'm going to continue to apply and I am like going to be a dog with a bone and I am not giving up until I get my firefighting job. I was like, I just hope I get it before I'm too old to still be a firefighter.
You know, a lot of people that transition that I've run across, they don't even know what they want to do when they get out. So I think you having that clear idea of I want to be a firefighter, that really shrinks your application pool down to something that's a little bit more manageable. So you're not applying for this job and that job and this job and that job. I've been told to
Yeah.
apply for like 20 different types of jobs and none of them are alike. And that's a lot.
Uh,
Compound that by 60 applications per job, and that's a
no.
lot. So for
Yeah.
you, even though you weren't able to become a firefighter again right away, you had a clear focus on what you were going to do when you get out. And that is very rare when it comes to military transition. So I think that was definitely something in your favor, even though it didn't work out, right away.
Yeah.
So anything else that was
Yeah.
challenging about your transition?
You leave the military and you leave the structure of the military and you leave the rank system of the military and you leave the accountability that comes with that rank and that structure. So when I did finally get hired at a fire department, I was like, these people are willy-nilly. Like they're running around doing whatever they want. You know what I mean? Like
There's no checklist.
yeah, right. They're like, oh, do your job and be good. And I was like, okay. You know what I mean? So if there's any, I'll be good. Okay. Any further extra training or specific training that I wanted to do. Say I wanted to be like for myself, for firefighting, you've got all these different certifications, right? You can certify as a firefighter until literally the day you retire, right? So what I'm saying is like you can be a firefighter, but then you can also be a fire instructor and then a fire officer and then a fire inspector, and there's 4 levels to that. So when I'm in the military, everyone would be like, are you working on your ones? And that would mean, are you working on your instructor 1, your inspector 1, and your officer 1? Oh, are you working on your 2s? Same exact thing, instructor, inspector, and officer 2s, And then, I'm on the outside and I'm like, so do we do any classes or any training? And they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we force doors or we'll cut up cars for training and literally anything for this department. It was a smaller department. If you wanted to increase your certifications, like let's say I wanted to be a fire inspector, because I was working in the state of Florida, I would have to go down to, say, Ocala, Florida, or go up to Alabama Fire College, take the time off, right? So I'd have to burn my vacation days, take my own money to pay for the class, and then take my own money to put myself in a hotel, all to get one more certification. So that was some of the stuff that I was like, wow, they just, yeah, be good at your job and you just show up and you go to work. And that was it. So if I wanted to do any more advancing for my own career, there was absolutely nothing like the Air Force, which was you work your ass off in the Air Force or any branch of the DoD. You work your ass off and you have a good attitude and you literally are cream of the crop in the military. Like it is not difficult. And I mean, maybe you agree. I don't think it's difficult to be the top cream of the crop of any job that you pick in the military.
We'll disagree on that one.
All right. Okay, so for fire, we'll disagree. For firefighting, like if I show up with a good attitude and I work my ass off, like there's so many people that are just here because the Air Force or the department, whatever branch they pick, it's their steady paycheck and that's how they get good benefits for their family, right? Like I currently work with guys that are active duty and that's the only reason that they're staying in. So anyone that cares and loves the job and wants to work harder, you rise to the top super fast. So if you're a quick riser or you give a shit, right, or you have a good attitude, you get handed like schools. They'll be like, hey, we see that you really care about firefighting. Would you like to be sent to, back to the Air Force Base where the DoD Fire Academy is and get your Fire Officer 3? Yeah, I would love to. And it's all free. You just show up and you know what I mean? Like it's amazing.
So
So
is that why you
wow.
came back to DoD to do fire?
Yeah, you know what? My wife and I were we had just bought a house and we knew we wanted kids. I was working 3 jobs. So even though I got the city firefighting job that I always wanted, they don't make diddly squat. Like if you're a firefighter on the outside, you make very little money. You have to do it because you have a passion for it. So those 2 part-time jobs that I picked up, personal training and being a lifeguard for the county, those ended up being like I worked those the whole time I worked. So for 5 years, I did lifeguarding, personal training, and firefighting. And I was like, I remember sitting down one day and my lower back was like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? Like my body was just falling apart because I was working 3 jobs, just to help make ends meet. You know how it is in this area, it's expensive.
Yes, it is. It can be very
And
expensive. Reasons why I left.
Very expensive.
Well, one of
Oh
the
Lord.
reasons, yeah.
Right? We miss you still, by the way. You can come back.
Oh, thank you.
Come
I'll
back.
visit again. You know I will.
Right, could you
Um,
visit a little after COVID has calmed down so
well,
we
you know,
can
if COVID would ever go away.
please?
I
Oh
know.
man.
So,
Um,
do you have any advice for anybody that's transitioning? I know it's been a while since you transitioned out of the military, but like you said, you
yeah.
help a lot of the airmen that are under your care
Yes.
at Hurlburt Field. So, like, what kind of advice can you
Mhm.
give to others that are transitioning?
You know, one of the things I tell the guys is pick that normal or easy job, especially when I'm talking to the firefighters. You know, if they're going back home, let's say, you know, to another state or wherever they're headed to, you know, every area kind of has its regular jobs that you can pick up. Like, let's say you're in an area that has a huge shopping mall. Like, you could pick, yeah, you might be bored, but, you know, if you're looking for a little bit more of financial stability, go work retail. Here, it's very easy to get any job that centers around tourism, you know, whether it's working at a hotel or a restaurant or you know, and so I tell them, I'm like, have that one thing that wouldn't crush your soul. Might not be exactly what you want to do, but have that in place. And you know what? Before you get out, if the military can pay for your training for that, right? You tap into whether it's a cert or whatever it is, like have them pay for it before you get out. You know, and don't wait until you get close to transitioning. Like think ahead, like, oh, you know, I'll probably get out in a year. You know what? Like for me, I want to go be a personal trainer at a gym. Guess what? Gyms are always hiring, right? I don't care what state you're in across America. Gyms are always hiring because they pick up a lot of people that don't have a lot of discipline and they end up showing late for work or they don't show up for their clients. Like if you, again, if you can show up and have a decent attitude and do the job, you could work at a gym for the rest of your life. That to me is an easy, normal job to jump into, you know. Fast food, God forbid, right? Some fast food joints around
Ew.
here, right? I mean, like, not not terribly exciting, but be willing to take that job and be humble enough to go, okay, this is where my financial stability is going to come through until I start college, right? For people that are going to go to school full time. And a lot of people, that is their transition plan, right? I'll get paid to go to school on my post 9/11 or my GI Bill.
I'm going to live off my VA compensation or I'm going to live off my retirement.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I can see that getting something uh just to bring in some income, but not anything that's too I like how you're like just a normal job. Cuz you don't want to be
Yeah.
doing something too taxing to where you don't even have the energy to apply elsewhere. Like get that
That's a good
boring job.
point.
If you're going to get a job that you don't want, get a boring job,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've had jobs like that where I didn't do a whole heck of a lot and I'm sitting there doing my homework. Like
Perfect.
so I can
Perfect.
totally see that if you can't find something, especially when your unemployment runs out, you got to do something. And depending
Yep.
on how much unemployment you get, it may not be enough. I can't believe the employment rate in Florida. It's ridiculous.
What's it? I wrote one note to pass on. Like, you know, I told you I didn't write any notes. I wrote one note.
One
I
note,
told you
one
a
note.
story.
Now you got
One
to
note
find it.
on advice. I wrote down, I said, do it for the right reasons if possible. Meaning, leave the military for the right reasons. You know? And I mean, I think that works both ways. Stay in the military for the right reasons. So if you're going to leave the military, do it for the right reasons. Don't get out just because you like, I hate the people I work with. You know what I mean? There are some people that they honestly believe that 100% is the situation that they're in. Therefore, the situation that they're in is being active duty military. So they think all their problems and their woes and their bad attitude and everything is what it's got to be the military's fault, you know? So if you can step outside of yourself long enough to first be humble enough to go, okay, maybe I have some growing up to do, or maybe I just have some growing in general to do. So do it for the right reasons if you're going to get out. Don't do it because you fucking hate the military. Because guess what? You're going to get to your next job. You didn't do any attitude adjustment. You didn't do any personal growth. And you're going to get to that next job. And you thought the job was what's going to bring your happiness. And guess what? I hate my new job. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so do it for the right reasons, you know? And I think that That way, no matter how you land, whether you land in the job or a boring normal job, or you land, you know what I mean, 3 part-time jobs, no matter where you land, you're still going to be content and you're still going to be happy because you realize it wasn't, I had to get away from the military.
I
So
think me and you similarly, the military was no longer conducive for our personal life. So it's not that we hated the military, it's the military wasn't working for us anymore. And so we had to make that tough choice. I mean, mine wasn't the same reason as yours, but similar line there where I had to choose my children and my mental health over the military. And you had to choose your now wife over the military because they made you make that choice. So I think that's important that, like you said, you got to look at why are you angry with the Air Force? Why are you disgruntled? Because if it's just, oh, this place sucks, you could PCS any day. Like it's,
yes. Yeah.
you could PCS, a new supervisor can come in. I mean, I spent 11 years, I only had I think I had 3 great supervisors. The rest of them were terrible. And and some of them were really bad. Like I should have turned them in.
I had to borrow a supervisor. Like I had 2 horrific supervisors, and the guy that actually cared about everyone was like, "Oh, I see you're really trying. You're not getting anywhere with the person that's supposed to be helping you." I'm with you. I did not have good supervisors at all, but I'll bet it influences how you help people now.
Oh,
Because I know,
absolutely.
yeah,
It
it does for me.
Well, and we have I think we have a little bit more flexibility now that we're civilians. Like
Yeah,
I do. I think we do
absolutely.
because I remember I used to help people when I was an NCO, and like, man, did I get backstabbed and undercut and all this other stuff. And not that that didn't happen to me as a contractor, because it did, but it affected me less. Like they
Yeah,
weren't writing
yeah,
EPRs on me, and
yeah.
as long as my boss supported me, I didn't care what other people thought about me because they had no impact on my life. And of course, I think age has a lot to do with it too. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm going to do what I love doing, and if you don't like it, then bye. But I definitely think
Right.
that we have more leeway, and especially with you being a GS, like being a contractor, you could be fired really quick. I think it's a little bit more difficult to get GSs out of there. So you help all those airmen,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
remember you're telling me that you started setting up dinners and you guys would all eat
Mhm.
together, and instead of
Yeah,
everybody just sitting in their rooms and not communicating.
yeah.
And I think that is so important. Your
Oh,
transition
man.
story, so just, I don't know, it's so boring. Nothing exciting
I
happened.
know. No, no. I got to be a personal trainer for a while. That was fun. You
People
wanna
are
know
gonna
what
be
was, let me
like,
tell you.
this is one of those transition stories Christina tells people is not normal.
You know what?
You
I
know
guess
what I
it
think it
wasn't very
is too? I think
eventful.
a lot of it has to do with your attitude. And I think a lot of it
Mm.
has to do with the fact that your wife is so supportive. Like, so
Oh,
supportive.
1,000%. Absolutely. 'Cause she had gotten out, like I said, she had gotten out, and, like I said, she had reserved for a while. It took her forever to get a job, but you know what? She drove around town and, like, dropped off resumes and drove around town and dropped off resumes, even if the different clinics weren't hiring, and that's how she got hired. Like 2 weeks after she dropped off a resume, uh, whatever clinic ended up hiring her, they lost the person in that position, and it wasn't because she found it in a wanted ad, it's because she drove around town and dropped resumes off
You can't
everywhere.
even do that anymore though, because they want everything to go through the applicant tracking system.
Yeah.
When did she get out?
Oh, 2005,
And you got
4,
out
5,
2000,
2005.
and you got out
I got
2006.
out. Yep. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you guys got out before TAP too, before TAP started.
Yeah.
So I honestly feel like things have just gotten so much more complicated too. And that might also be
Mm.
another reason why your transition was not so complicated. I mean, we have so many
Mm-mm.
nonprofits doing workshops. We have the transition assistance program. All of these
Mm.
jobs have switched over to the applicant tracking system. You know, the effort it takes to drive around and drop off resumes is a lot different than going on Indeed and just pressing send on your resume, the same resume. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been, you know, it's almost like computers have ruined it. And all these programs,
Mm-hmm.
they've just made it so much more complicated because it's now more competitive. What do you
So
think?
people can't even. I mean, I don't know. See, I'm so old school in that thought process that like if I had to go get a job right now, even if I'm sending everything, obviously this isn't on base because like when I
Right.
got my civilian, look, when I put in for a promotion within the fire department, even if I'm not going anywhere, it's still all computerized. It doesn't mean jack if you walk in person. But in town, and maybe because this town isn't like a huge town, like I feel like you can still drive up to, and go in there, even if you're submitting stuff through the different computer application processes. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a
I think
possibility,
for service industry, you can do that. Like, I feel
but
like
that
I
would
could
be it.
walk yeah, I feel like I could walk into a bar and find the manager and talk my way into a job if I really wanted one there, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but as far as, like, any of the 'cause they I mean, things are growing in Fort Walton Beach where, like, Booz Allen Hamilton has an office there now. It's not a big office,
mm,
but they have an office there. I think KBR even has some people there now with them switching over
oh
to
wow,
the POTF contract. So, you know,
mm-hmm.
getting those jobs, you definitely have to go through their the bigger companies. You have to go through that applicant
Yeah,
tracking system, and it's just not like
no,
it used to be. Now, if you network properly, you could possibly backdoor the system, but that doesn't happen very often unless you're like some
yeah,
lieutenant colonel that,
yeah. You'd have to be like you have to be way up
yeah,
there.
and your retired lieutenant colonel friend would have to be working there and, some type of
Yeah,
craziness like that. So, I
yeah,
wonder if that's why when you talk about your transition, it's just so simplified. It's not as complicated
yeah,
as it is now. Yours was just like, I just kept sending my applications to the fire department, so they hired me.
yeah,
Walked
yeah.
into a gym and said, "I'm awesome." Well, and I think
Yeah, it
you're
was
really
simple.
well, and I think you're the kind of person that's almost like a natural salesperson too. Like you could probably sell to somebody.
Oh no.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I know I'm a people person and I'm friendly. So maybe by proxy of being so friendly, I would make someone feel like we're friends, therefore we're familiar, therefore I could sell them something.
So we have decided that your transition was kind of boring, but I agree it was probably you had a really great support system and the times were just different when you got out, as far as the process of
Yeah.
finding a job and the transition process wasn't very beefed up in the military. They were just kind of like, hey, you need to get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So
See
do
ya.
you do you have any final words for anybody listening to this podcast?
I actually do, and this just struck me. See, you collected your thoughts, I collected mine. When I did finally get offered a job at a fire department in the area, the crazy thing was the assistant fire chief at the time when I got hired was a retired Air Force firefighter. And he had known me from when he was in the military. Obviously, he did a full career and retired. And he had heard of me and knew that I cared and knew that I would work my ass off. And that's something that I always tell the guys is, even if you are going to do your 4 or your 6 and you're going to bounce, realize that your 4 years or your 6 years, that one term that you do, you're still building your resume. And it's not just your resume, this is your reputation that you're building and your character. And had I been like just a POS, like bounce, I'm out of here. I know I'm just trying to get in and get my firefighting. I had no idea I was gonna fall in love with the military. But let's say I had just held with that. I'm gonna do 4 years and I'm getting the hell out. Like if I hadn't built my character and my reputation when this department was actually hiring, the assistant chief at the time told someone else that they knew. And this doesn't make sense. There's no details, but there was a person in the middle, and he was like, "Hey, I heard Turek got out, and she's looking for a firefighting position. Do you have any contacts to her?" Because the guy that was doing the hiring, I didn't even know he was in the area or that he worked for a fire department. And my buddy called me, and he was like, "Hey, the assistant chief at this fire department wants you to go apply." And I had to do the application process and go through the board like everyone else. But thankfully, I got the job. And I don't think I would have gotten that job if I would have all over everyone for my 5 years in the military. Yeah, that's my last piece of advice.
That's your last piece of advice. That's really good advice,
Yeah.
actually. I
So,
really think it is. This has been another episode of Transition Tales. Thank you so much for being here with me, AJ. It has been a pleasure. Bye, everybody.